Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Right, okay. This is going to be just a thoughts video, and feel free, anybody, to respond to this if you wish to. Right. Live-action Transformers films. How many are we going to be looking at in the future? Now, I know that they've already confirmed there's going to be 6. If you add on 5 or 6 after Age of Extinction, it's going to be 6. Right. Now, just to confirm with Age of Extinction, from a level, that was probably, out of so far 4 films, that was the better of Michael Bay's work. Putting on the first Transformers film, that was the start. That essentially was, I don't think it was the Transformers film everybody wanted, but it was a good way to start, and it did give a lot of fans happiness, but probably not to the extent people wanted. But this isn't really going to be a review on the film. This is a review on more, well, not even a review, it's more of a thoughts on how far a Transformers live action going to be. Now, starting with direction, let me just go into the concepts here. So far, this is the 4th film directed by Michael Bay. They've confirmed number 5, and there is apparently going to be a 6. Now, number 5 will be out in 2 years' time, so I imagine we'll be looking at another Bay film. How far are we going to go with Michael Bay directing these, and how far Hasbro going to go when it comes to the live-action films, and how far are Paramount going to go? When you look at it from a certain perspective, live-action Transformers films have potential, they have a lot of potential, and it's never really been met. Age of Extinction is probably the first film that starts to meet the criteria people want. You've had a really great human character who did have a good story and was more involved in the events of the film than the previous main character. Your overall look of the bots was a lot better. I thought the CGI on them was a massive improvement. The overall story was probably better. There were flaws. There were character flaws, story flaws, but at least it was a better film than the last 2. Regarding how many, as I've said, 6 have been confirmed. Number 5 has been greenlit. That's due out in 2 years, as I've just said. I repeat myself. Is Bay going to direct all 6? Probably yes. So by the time we get on to number 6, is it going to be a case of people may not even be bothered anymore because they've seen it all before? We really need to go down a different route with the Transformers. It needs a different director. I think we need somebody who is a fan, who is familiar with the mythos, familiar with the lore of Transformers. I think we could use a couple of writers to write the scripts who have been involved in Transformers, who have written the comics, who have written the books, who have done the artwork, stuff like that. We need people who've had a physical involvement in the actual franchise to improve it. I mean, there's a lot people want in the live-action film, there's no denying that, but some of it's impossible, some of it will never happen. I mean, for example, just to put it out there, I remember reading some comments somebody had put up on, I think it was on YouTube actually, or a forum about live-action films, and they were saying how they'd want them to be set in the 80s as they were always intended to be. Well, that's kind of a one-sided opinion, considering you can't really say that they were always meant to be set in the 80s, because the only reason it's set in the 80s is because it aired in the 80s and started in the 80s. If it had been 10 years previously, it would have been in the 70s. If it was 10 years earlier, later, it would have been in the 90s. So really, it's not so much a fact that that's when it was meant to be set, it's more of a case of that's how it was set, because that's when it was aired. Rather than being a future thing, it was a present thing. Also, there's been mention of them transforming, and should transform how they did in the animated original series. That just wouldn't work live action. You couldn't pull it off, it just wouldn't work, it'd be too complex, it wouldn't really look right. The way they do it in the live action film works. It's physical transformation with moving parts and everything, and it works. Regarding the live action films, there is a lot of potential, as we all know. The only problem is I think it's just going to go down the same route. If you look at it from a perspective, as I said, the first 3 films all evolved around the same thing. Number 1, main character's love life. Number 2, an artifact. Number 3, the artifact being the core reason of the entire plot. That was the same concept of 1, 2 and 3. I mean, 4, yeah, I suppose there was an artifact, there was the seed, but that didn't really come into being the main focus of the story until halfway through the film. But this is the point. Michael Bay seems to have this concept of having to have an artifact in all the films. Why does it have to be an artifact? Why can't we just go down the route of having the typical Decepticon Autobot conflict? I mean, so far, Autobot-wise, Decepticon-wise, Megatron hasn't really been much of a villain. I loved Lockdown in Age of Extinction because I really felt like a proper villain. He actually did stuff. He actually had a personalisation character which made you feel like this is the type of guy you do not mess with. He's dangerous. You didn't feel that with Megatron at all. And the overall concept of the films right now is really, it's a money grabber. That's what it is. The amount of money those films bring in is a lot. But how long until people do get bored? It's going to happen. It's probably happening already. I mean, this is the fourth film directed by Michael Bay. It did show a difference the first three films, but when it falls down to it, all the four films are very similar in a lot of ways. You know, you've always got an artifact, you've always got the car chases. Okay, in the fourth film, it wasn't so much evolved around a relationship, which was really good. It wasn't so human-built as the other three were. There was a lot more bot interaction. You actually had, rather than having the human army show up and kick Decepticon ass, you actually had Autobots kicking Decepticon ass, which is what it should be, not humans. Since when do humans get involved in it? Since when in the original G1 series do humans ever fight the Decepticons? Barely. So, Age of Extinction is the right way to go. If Michael Bay and everyone else were to look at that, realise that, double it, times it, multiply it, you'd probably get a film everybody would love. The only thing is, it's no secret that this franchise, the live action franchise, it will last as long as they can make it last. It isn't going to stop at 6 films. I've even heard it may even go as high as 9 films. But how long until it just gets pointless? I mean, there are so many other characters you could introduce. I mean, to be honest, the concept of Galvatron was introduced too late. He should have come into it in the second film after Megatron was resurrected, but it wasn't. It was back as Megatron, which made no sense. Full on, the Transformers live action films are most likely going to continue for as long as they possibly can, and it's going to get to the point where there'll be that one live action film which will just probably be utterly terrible, nobody will like it, and that's when they'll just flop it. You know, that'll be the end of the franchise, the live action franchise. And the only problem with the live action franchise is probably 90% of the figures that come out for it just are awful. I mean, Movieverse figures aren't particularly that good, as many people will comment. You get the odd one which are okay, but Movieverse themselves aren't that good. The vast reason for that is because they're more or less marketing than they are actual franchise. And as many people have said, most of the Movieverse is something like, it's meant to be like 5 Bumblebees for every character. You seem to have like 5 versions of Bumblebee in every line now. And it's like Bumblebee, they like try to turn him into the entire concept of Transformers, like he's the figurehead. But he's got no character. At least his character in Age of Extinction was a bit more better than in the first 3. More fleshed out in a lot of ways. But I still want him to physically speak. I mean, like, for example, in Prime, Bumblebee wasn't really a character, but then in the Prime film, he's a character because he can now speak, and he just seems more alive and more character-like. I think the overall thing with the live-action films is they also do have a habit of bringing in characters, and then they're only in like the one film, or they'll be in one film, then you may see them again in the next film, but then they'll get killed off really quickly. Overall, there are so many different characters you could bring into the Transformers live action films. The only thing is, they really need to stop the whole new film, new characters, but none of them have really a background. That's one of the biggest problems. A lot of the Transformers have no background, really. There's no character development with them a lot of the time. There's no background story to them. You don't know the histories or the origins or how they even got involved in all of this. If you look at the perspective of Age of Extinction, for example, with the exception of really Prime and Bumblebee, as the core group, so the 5 core Transformers that are in this, the Autobots, they're like the 5 main core characters. Out of the 5, really, only 2 of them have been in all 4 films. The other 3 haven't. Whereas there's nothing wrong with that. Essentially, you can go by that the 3rd film is the whole shuttle thing that brings in a wave of Autobots to Earth. But the fact that you can just have characters just in the films with no real history or background to them doesn't explain anything about them. And it's kind of confusing in some ways, because you think, well, where have they come from? Where have they been all this time? The fact that you've always... Why is it also that you seem to have this concept of Autobots being outnumbered by Decepticons? I mean, for example, in Age of Extinction, it was like, technically in the Big China battle, I think it's something like 50 of these Decepticon human-built clone things fighting against one, which is Hound, and then you've got Bumblebee. I mean, the fact that those odds alone would mean it would be very difficult to really suppress and win. I mean, no matter how good a combat veteran you are, it's still tremendously odds against you. Then the Dinobots come into it, and I did like the Dinobots. This is becoming a review, isn't it, really? Trying not to, but I can't help it. But in the long run, as I was saying about the full live-action franchise, how far is it going to go? Are we going to stop at 6? Are we going to go up to 9? I mean, are we ever going to get another director? I mean, originally I think Bay wasn't even supposed to direct 3, but he came on board apparently after getting a large payment from Paramount, I think. Don't know if that's true. But overall, the live action films, I think they've got a long way to go until they're ready to be what we, the fans, want them to be. You know, for a start, I want Bumblebee to speak. I want him to physically speak and be more of a character. I'd like the other bots to have backgrounds, more origins, be strong characters. Try to keep human element on a minimal as well. And also, maybe in the next film we can stop with the artefacts. There doesn't have to be a central artifact from the Transformers universe that has to be about story. You can not have that and be fine with it. I mean, the thing is, the only thing I definitely want is in the next film, I want a really strong evil villain like Lockdown. You know, I mean, okay, we've got Galvatron now, who's more or less was set up in Age of Extinction. If he's going to be, I imagine he'll be the next main villain in 5. Can we have it so he'll be strong, like Lockdown? He'll be a good character. I don't want a repeat of Dark of the Moon Megatron, who spent most of the film in some sort of weird depression state, which just didn't work. You know, overall, there's a lot to go on. The live action films have a lot of potential, but they're not quite there yet. Anyway, guys, if anybody wants to respond to this, by all means do. Let me know what you think. I'm going to say this is the end of the video. Don't want to go on too long, but peace out, guys. And feel free to comment and respond like YouTube ways. Peace out, everyone.